Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'd like to get into some guitar rock history. With a name, Robin Trower, and that is not a totally obscure guy, but certainly doesn't hold the reverence that a guitar reverence that a Jimmy Page, Eddie Van Halen, and Eric Clapton might have. That being said, Robin Trower's flagship album was Bridge of Sighs, which for my money has to go down as one of the best ever, at least in the top five, I would think. A phenomenal record for so many reasons. And well written, James Dewar, phenomenal vocalist, and of course Trower's playing's off the charts. So get into a little bit about who he was, where he came from, to help us get into character a little bit better, to maybe try to cop some of his style. He formed he's an English guy, of course, and in 1962 formed a band called the Paramounts that didn't really do much as far as getting their sea legs over here in the U.S. But what was interesting about that union included Gary Brooker, and Gary Brooker was the ringleader and the guy that formed Procol Harem. So that connection in the Paramounts led to Trower eventually joining Brooker's Procol Harem, and he played with Trower played with Procol Harem from 67 to 71. What's interesting about Trower's tenure in Procol Harem is it was after Whiter Shade was already recorded. Even though Trower played on the album that featured Whiter Shade, he wasn't involved with the band up until the point of Whiter Shade. And we all know Whiter Shade of Pale, of course, the big hit by Procol Harem, certainly gave that band a name in the United States. The single went to 5 here, number 1 in the UK. What was interesting about Trower leaving Procol Harem is in between Procol Harem and him finally forming his own band, there was a band called Jude that he put together. And he had Frankie Miller slated to do vocals, which you got to check out Frankie Miller. Frankie Miller is a phenomenal singer that never got any traction over here, but was a huge influence on Bob Seger. And so if you get a chance, pull up some Frankie Miller and listen to that guy. He had some pipes and was a really, really good singer. But in the band that never went nowhere, in Jude, he also met James Dewar. James Dewar was in the Stone Crows, and then was picked up to play bass for Jude. And the band never went anywhere, but Trower, when he formed the Robin Trower Band in 1973, Dewar, of course, came on to play bass and sing, and effectively knocked the ball out of the park as a vocalist. So a big part of the success of Bridge of Sighs was certainly the fact that Dewar was involved and drew comparisons to Paul Rodgers. That's debatable, but that's a big name to be in the company of. So I think Dewar was a phenomenal musician in his own right. But of course, in 1973, Trower had secured a deal with Chrysalis Records, which is awesome representation. And he ended up doing 8 records with those guys. So they kept him on for a long, long time. And Bridge of Sighs, he never matched that. And how could you, I guess, when you come out with a record that strong? But he was dropped by Chrysalis in 1983, like I said, after doing 8 records, and was picked up by Atlantic. So that's not too shabby. You go from Chrysalis Records to Atlantic. Now, he only did 2 with Atlantic Records, but to do 9 albums with major label representation is a feat that you don't see very often. I think he has 27 records altogether, and some of those are forgettable. You're going to do that much music, and you're trying to find your way, and you're trying to make some mainstream hay. You're going to take some chances, and sometimes they're not going to work out. I had occasion to see Trower, interestingly enough, here in my little hometown. We have a nightclub that probably holds capacity of like 5, maybe 600. I'm not 100% sure on that, but somewhere in that neighborhood. And this would have been the mid-90s. And I was struck when I went there by the fact that there might have been 200 people there. And 200 people in that room didn't look great, but he played great. But what struck me about that was the fact that, that here's the guy that did Bridge of Sighs, and I was surprised even back then. Trower has always been, like I said, that under the radar name, but certainly known within the guitar communities. And I was surprised by that turnout. The turnout wasn't so hot, but played great. He recently did, you guys should check out a DVD called Out of Time. This was a record that was, I believe, recorded in Germany on his birthday. And might have been his 65th birthday. Not sure. I have the DVD, I just forget the number. But at any rate, he played his ass off. He just played really, really good, and his band was phenomenal. And they did a record called Out of Time, and that has a tune on it called Sweet Angel, which is probably one of the best Trower tunes I've ever heard. It's Bridge of Sighs level. So the album's worth having just for that song. But they did it live that night and crushed it, So I know since he's had some trouble. I know a couple years ago he was playing in Maryland and he had to cut the night short. He wasn't feeling well, and he was subsequently taken to the hospital down there in Maryland. And then June 6th of last year, he canceled a tour due to a health condition that he released in a statement that would require a major operation. So here we are in 2025. I'm not sure. He survived, certainly. He hasn't passed away, thankfully. But I haven't really heard much about how that operation went and what his plans are. But at his advanced age of 80, I think back of before the pandemic, working the retirement homes, going in and playing at the retirement homes, and when you see those guys shuffling down the hallways, at late 70s into their 80s, it's remarkable to think, hey, there's a guy out there with a Stratocaster that's still making his way, around, at least up until, a couple years ago. So sadly, it looks like, that his touring days might have passed, and that's unfortunate. But lot of a big body of work. 27 albums is a big body of work. I would certainly recommend all the Chrysalis records. Bridge of Sighs goes without saying. Not familiar a ton with the 2 Atlantic records, but Out of Time, Sweet Angel, check that one out. And I'd pick up that DVD too. So, Robin Trower, unfairly dogged by the Hendrix comparisons, phenomenal guitar player in his own right.